We know the names. Alexander, Caesar, Cleopatra. These figures echo through millennia, their stories etched into our collective memory. But here's something that should shake us. The most powerful human being who ever lived. You've never heard of them. Not because historians missed them, not because their story was lost, but because power, real power, doesn't always announce itself. And the forces that truly shape humanity often move in whispers, not declarations. Today, we're going to explore why the most influential lives in history left no trace, why that matters more than you think, and what it reveals about the very nature of power itself. Let's start with a thought experiment. Around 10,000 BCE, somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, a human being made a decision that would alter the trajectory of our entire species. They looked at wild grain, and instead of simply gathering it, they planted it. They waited. They cultivated. We don't know their name. We never will. But that single act of innovation, agriculture, did more to shape human civilization than any conquest, any philosophy, any empire. It made cities possible. It made armies possible. It made everything that came after possible. This person wasn't powerful in any traditional sense. They commanded no armies. They built no monuments. Yet their influence ripples through every single day of your life. The bread you eat, the city you live in, the fact that you have time to watch this video instead of foraging for food, all of it traces back to someone whose name is lost to the silence of necessity. And here's the unsettling truth. Most of humanity's greatest turning points happened this way. Anonymous, unrecorded. The first person to domesticate fire, the first to develop language sophisticated enough to pass complex ideas across generations, the first to forge metal, to develop the wheel, to understand that seeds could be saved and planted. These weren't kings, they were problem solvers, tinkerers, desperate or curious people whose innovations survived because they worked. And in their anonymity, they were more powerful than any pharaoh. But let's dig deeper. Why don't we know these names? The obvious answer seems to be writing didn't exist yet or wasn't widespread. But that explanation hides something more troubling. Writing, when it emerged, wasn't a democratic tool. It was a technology of power, controlled by the powerful. For most of human history, literacy was the privilege of elites. Priests, scribes, rulers, merchants. The stories that got written down were the stories those elites wanted preserved, usually their own. Think about what this means. For thousands of years, history wasn't a record of what mattered most to humanity. It was a record of what mattered most to those who could afford to hire scribes. Wars, dynasties, property transfers, religious doctrine. Meanwhile, the vast majority of human experience, the innovations, the wisdom, the quiet revolutions happening in homes and fields and workshops, vanished like breath on glass. Consider this. Somewhere in medieval Europe, a woman perfected a farming technique that increased crop yields in her village by 20%. That knowledge spread, village to village, generation to generation, through demonstration and oral tradition. It might have saved thousands from starvation, but she's invisible to history because she couldn't read, couldn't write, and no one in power thought her innovation worthy of parchment. There's a paradox at the heart of influence. The most direct, lasting power often operates at the most intimate scale. Think about the teacher who shapes a mind at the exact right moment, the mentor who sees potential no one else notices, the parent who models resilience, curiosity, intellectual courage. These people don't just affect one life, they set off cascading chains of influence that ripple through generations. Albert Einstein credited a geometry book given to him at age 12 as a pivotal moment in his intellectual development. But we don't know who gave him that book or why they thought to do so. That anonymous decision helped create modern physics. How many times has this happened? How many revolutionary thinkers, artists, leaders were shaped by someone we'll never know? A teacher whose name was forgotten. A friend who asked the right question at the right time. A stranger who showed unexpected kindness that changed someone's entire trajectory. This is power without recognition, influence without record, and it's everywhere all the time, invisible to history but fundamental to it. Modern archaeology has started to reveal something beautiful. Even without names, we can sometimes glimpse these invisible lives. Not through what they said, but through what they made, what they used, what they touched. A pottery shard can reveal that someone experimented with a new glaze composition. Where patterns on ancient tools show us that someone was left-handed, that they worked for hours with particular motions. Medical analyses of skeletal remains tell us about caregivers who nursed the sick and elderly for years, decades even, people whose compassion left marks in bone density and survival rates. These aren't names, but they're evidence that power and significance don't require monuments or texts, that a life can matter enormously while leaving only the faintest trace. So why does this matter? Why spend time thinking about people we can never know? Because it reframes everything about power, influence, and what makes a life significant. We live in an age obsessed with legacy, with personal brands, with going viral and being remembered. We've inherited from history this idea that importance means being recorded, being known, leaving your name in stone or text or digital permanence. But the real lesson of history is the opposite. The most powerful lives are usually invisible. The most important work is usually quiet. The greatest innovations often come from people who will never be famous. That person who invented agriculture, they probably just wanted their family to survive the winter. The unnamed teacher who changed Einstein's trajectory, they were probably just doing their job, maybe not even particularly well by their own estimation. The medieval farmer who perfected that technique, she was solving an immediate problem, not trying to change the world. And yet they did change the world, fundamentally, permanently. This means that you, right now, might be living a historically significant life without knowing it. The way you raise your children, the skills you pass on, the small kindnesses you show, the problems you solve in your work, any of these could be the butterfly effect that reshapes someone's future. Could be the catalyst for something extraordinary. You'll never know. History probably won't record it, but it might matter more than anything that does get recorded. There's something both humbling and liberating in this. Humbling because it reminds us how much we don't know, how much we can never know about what really drives history forward. Liberating because it means that significance isn't reserved for the famous, the powerful, the recorded. The most powerful life in history might have been lived by a grandmother in Bronze Age China whose wisdom shaped her grandchildren, who shaped their children, who eventually, generations down the line, produced someone whose name we do know. Or it might have been lived by someone whose innovations were so perfectly absorbed into the fabric of society that they became invisible, indistinguishable from the way things have always been done. We stand on the shoulders of giants, yes. But most of those giants are anonymous. Most of that strength is invisible. And most of the people who changed everything were never recorded. Maybe that's how it should be. Maybe the truest power doesn't need recognition. Maybe the deepest influence doesn't require monuments. Maybe the most important question isn't, will history remember me? But what small thing can I do today that might matter more than I'll ever know? Thanks for watching Echoes of History. If this changed how you think about power and significance, let me know in the comments. And remember, you might be more important than you think.